Hello and welcome to another episode of Latitude. The recently held International Solar Alliance in New Delhi, which saw the participation of heads of 21 governments and many other representations from across the world, and an event that was jointly inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the French President, has seen very clearly the need to enhance India's ability to gain energy from sources other than fossil fuels, petroleum and natural gas. And therefore, energy security is very much at the forefront of a country like India, which needs energy desperately to achieve many of its development goals. We have with us a panel of two very well-informed and authoritative voices on energy security. We have Mr. Narendra Taneja, a globally recognized figure on energy-related issues, and also the advisor to the government on energy and energy security. And we have with us once again Mr. Talmiz Ahmed. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed has been our envoy to 4 countries in the Middle East, writes extensively on energy and other issues, including political Islam. I'll start with you, Mr. Taneja, sir. Energy security and the Solar Alliance. The Solar Alliance was clearly seen as a very big step forward under an Indian initiative. And it was well timed with the French President being here, because the French were also looking to move the next step forward after the Paris Climate Summit and the Americans pulling out. Could you give us briefly the picture in terms of how much is this Solar Alliance initiative going to fulfill our need for energy when really we continue to all over the world be dependent on fossil fuels and natural gas?
See, Solar Alliance, International Solar Alliance, is a historic move. It's a brainchild of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But when you look at it very carefully, it's in fact has got broadly speaking, three major objectives. Number one is, of course, to position India as a major player and a leader, in solar energy on the global stage, to position. Number two is to very powerfully convey a message to the world that India, when it comes to renewable energy, is not only a serious player, but actually is a pioneer in many ways. Number three, this is also to use the solar power as a tool in order to promote India's overall national interest globally, because this is a platform which India, together with France, launched recently. But if you look at the initial response has been fantastic. With India's own global footprint, and wherever, for instance, India was not strong enough, especially the French-speaking areas of Africa and other parts of the world, France, of course, is a tremendous help there. But the more important thing is that, India and France, they share the same vision when it comes to that. And this also positions India in a very leadership role vis-a-vis the future, because the future is renewable and solar in particular. So today, for instance, we are not blessed with oil, so OPEC headquarters is not located in India. You see, we are not also that blessed when it comes to other sources of fuel. So that is the reason that, we are an important player, but we are not really the hub. We are not the center of that. But when you look at, for instance, when India looks at the future, that is 2030, 2040 and beyond, solar is going to be as important as oil today. And so we started preparing for that. So basically, International Solar Alliance is to position India as a major player, as an important leader on the global energy landscape 2030 and beyond.
Well, you made several important points. I mean, the fact that, India can be on the high table when it comes to talking about energy, alternate energy. But Mr. Ahmed, sir, since you have been dealing with the oil-producing countries and the GCC countries in particular, India's oil imports of over 60% continue to be oil. 80% from LNG in West Asia, and some figures by the Center for Policy Research have indicated that the rise will be 40 to 52% for coal and 88 to 93% for oil and 40 to 70% for LNG. These will be the rising demands in the next several years. So where are we going to get any more from where we are getting, and can our economy afford to continue to import that kind of energy which we obviously need for the Indian economy to boom?
We have to look at energy scenarios at two different levels.
Right.
The scenario that pertains to our present and future needs up to say 2040, and what we are preparing for after this scenario, after the 2040 threshold. We have a document with us, that is the draft energy policy document. It has not yet been finalized. It was promulgated last year. It very clearly indicates that by 2040, while renewable energy, with all the efforts that we make today, will still be about 13% of our energy mix, and that fossil fuels, coal, oil and gas, will be well over 80%. And this will be at much higher levels compared to what we have today. So we will continue to be extremely dependent on imports for all the three fuels, coal, oil and gas. In the case of coal, our dependence on imports will be about 90%. And in case of coal, it could be about 50%, and even in case of gas, it will be a substantial amount. With regard to imports, therefore, we have to be extremely careful, extremely sensitive, that this is an outlay that is a given. It is not a choice. If we have to sustain our growth rates and we have to provide for the development of our people and the promises that our government has made to its various citizens about giving them energy and providing them with energy security as a right, then obviously we have to structure an arrangement that would take into account these massive imports.
So, Mr. Taneja, I mean, it's very clear that we are still very import dependent. A question that often comes to my mind, and this is based on remarks made by earlier cabinet ministers, that India is floating on oil. And somebody has even gone to say that we are from the same continental bloc as Australia, and if Australia can have shale gas, then why can't we have shale gas? And the third thing is that if we dig deeper than the 500 meters that we normally dig for our coal mines, then maybe we can get better coal and more coal. So I would like you to dismiss or agree with some of these myths that do the rounds, as much as to tell us a simple thing. And going back to your solar thing, one of the challenges I find with solar energy is that it's hard to store it. So at certain times of the year, you are full on with good solar energy, and certain times of the year, you don't have enough ability, or technology doesn't allow you to store it, so you cannot use it when the sunshine is minimal. So how do you overcome that balance?
You see, first on whether India is floating on oil and gas or not, the fact is, yes, that was the myth, in the sense that, in the 50s, people thought Himalayas was actually floating on oil. And that was one of the major reasons the headquarters of ONGC is located in Dehradun. Okay. They thought if Himalaya is floating on oil, that's where we're going to get most of our oil and gas from. Then let's be there, let the headquarters be there. But that turned out to be not true. You see, so we have to depend basically on geologists, what they have to say. And now we have got, India included, we have got the best technology available for that. The point is that when you're drilling for oil, it's not only that you're drilling and how deep you are ready to go, whether in water or on land. The question is whether that production of that would be viable or not. If you drill deeper, explore deeper, and the cost of production turns out to be higher than importing, then it's not really economics, doesn't really work out. Let's accept the fact that India is not as blessed as many other countries.
Okay.
Not even as blessed as Bangladesh or Myanmar probably. So we have to accept it. So therefore we have to prepare for imports. Now my own assessment is that our dependence on import for oil is going to go is already about 82 to 83%. It probably will touch about 90%, which means we'll be importing 90% of our total requirement of oil in coming next few years. And maybe over the period of time, maybe 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we will be probably importing something like, from 4 million barrels to maybe about 8 or 9 million barrels of oil per day. So, and we should be accordingly preparing for that. The story in gas is also more or less moving in the same direction. Our import dependence today is in the region of about 45 to 50%, and this is only going to go up as we move in the direction of gas-based economy. So I think that, but luckily, oil and gas is available in geographies not very far from us. But their geopolitics is totally different. And as part of this strategy, what India has already started doing, and I firmly support this idea that we must diversify, supply sources so we are not dependent only on the Middle East for our import for oil and gas. So we are already diversifying. For instance, we just started importing LNG even from the United States. As far as with the United States, when we could have actually got it from Qatar and some other places close by. But so when we look at the overall scenario, when we look at oil and gas, I think for the next 40 years, oil and gas will remain almost central as far as our economy is concerned.
Okay.
But at the same time, we have started preparing for solar, and I think those 2040 beyond solar is going to be a major kind of player in terms of India's energy mix. Yes, there are challenges, but I think challenges are mainly that you can't store solar.
Okay.
But but on that, a lot of work is happening, and I think in about 10 years from now, probably that issue will be taken care of.
Right. Some very well brought out points, and quite clearly there is a different set of dynamics that are at play right now and maybe for another 2 decades. But after that, alternate energies and what they provide to India would also be a matter of serious consideration. But how and what needs to be catered for the future, that after a break.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Alexa, what's India's cricket score?
Australia beat India by 50 runs. Alexa, please add tissues to the shopping list. I've added tissues.
Very funny.
Introducing Amazon Echo. Sports updates, music and more. Just ask.
Gabon, your next investment destination in Africa, presents special economic zones with major tax incentives for investors. 0% tax on land properties. 0% income tax for the first 10 years. Long-term assured supply of timber. 100% exemption on corporate tax and capital gains tax.
Welcome to a country designed by nature. Welcome to a land of opportunity. Welcome to Gabon.
Gabon calling, an ocean of timber tales.
अब तक हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस होते थे कुछ ऐसे.
Presenting Max Bupa Proactive Health Insurance. ये काम आए हर रोज. Daily health coaching, diagnostic tests, यहाँ तक कि डॉक्टर विजिट्स भी, और साथ में हॉस्पिटलाइजेशन कवर. तो अब अपनाइए मैक्स बूपा प्रोएक्टिव.
Partner Capital First. Partner in Progress, Gabon Special Economic Zone. Power Partner, Pravin.
ये ले फिलिप्स, ये पूरा चलेगा. इसमें है ड्यूरा पावर टेक्नोलॉजी, इसीलिए ये एक चले 4 ऑर्डिनरी ट्रिमर्स के बराबर. इनोवेशन एंड यू, फिलिप्स.
A lot can change in 5 years, but your Isuzu MUX will stay like new with 5 years of free service and a 5-year warranty.
सुनो हो मन चाहे movies or shows anytime. हमारा संडे है. It's time for Prime. It's time for Prime. मेरा भी है. क्या हुआ? टिफिन घुमा के आई है.
मैं भी
जब जरूरतों की टाइट हो डेडलाइन, it's time for prime, it's time for prime. जब बोर हो के दिल मांगे songs की non-stop line. It's time for prime.
जब मिले प्राइम वीडियो, प्राइम म्यूजिक, फ्री और फास्ट डिलीवरी और एक्सक्लूसिव डील्स इन जस्ट $9.99 per year.
Time for Amazon Prime.
Welcome back. We continue to have our two experts with us, and we are looking at energy security and what India is doing, what India needs to do to ensure that the supply of energy related items remains uninterrupted if India's economy needs to boom in the way that our policy planners would like it to, and the people of India would like India to become economically stronger. And Mr. Ahmed sir, energy security is commonly understood as import kar liya, oil aa gaya hamare paas and everything is fine. So if oil imports stop, then there is alarm bells ringing in the media and elsewhere in the country. But energy security has various dimensions. Now this ranges from where it is available to the consumer and the man on the ground here, to its arrival through largely sea routes and the protection of those sea routes, and the acquisition or the certainty of the flow of energy from the oil wells and oil fields elsewhere in the world, and the protection of the critical infrastructure. So considering that largely our routes of import are sea-based, do you think for something as important as that, we don't need to diversify our routes of import for energy security, or we remain complacent that the Indian Navy will protect your sea lanes coming from the Gulf region to the Indian coastline and everything will be honky-dory?
You have made the point about the sea routes. We get most of our oil and a lot of our gas from the Gulf. Other than the situation in 1990, when Iraq had occupied Kuwait, and at one stroke we found that we were no longer getting the oil that we needed, there has been no disruption in terms of supplies to India. These supplies will be disrupted only if there's a catastrophic conflict in the region, which would involve the principal oil producers. Absent that, all the principal oil producers of the region, indeed all the oil producers of the region, have a vested interest in ensuring that the sea lanes of supply, sea lanes of communications are kept open. So I don't think we should get overly agitated only on this account. We have other larger reasons about being concerned with regard to the security of the Indian Ocean. Sea lanes of communications is obviously one of them. We were at one time concerned about piracy, for instance, and we have been able to take care of that as a result of national and global effort. So let us not get overly agitated. Yes, we must diversify. But diversification is easier said than done. We have all heard this word diversification for the last 25 years. But the arithmetical reality is that you still get the cheapest supplies from the Gulf for all kinds of very good reasons, geographical space, as well as the compatibility of our refineries with the oil that comes from there. Where else will you get it from? Nigeria, Angola, all kinds of other sources, North Africa, they become extremely uneconomical. So long as you have a situation in the Gulf that is largely stable, we will continue to get the supplies. I'm not pretending to you that the Gulf is not a source of concern. It is. And that is where I would have been advocating for some time that we should be seriously involved with the various security issues of this region.
Okay, Mr. Taneja, you've been a long-standing advocate of the Tapi pipeline, because that is the other, other than the sea-based route, the land-based route. And it has its merits, and there is a view that the Tapi pipeline is something that is just waiting to take off in terms of what I'm told, that certain amount of investment that has already been made towards it. It is a 1814 kilometer gas pipeline expected to transport 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas for a period of 30 years, and it will pass through Pakistan, and Afghanistan?
Well, I personally am a strong supporter of the TAPI idea. I think, is doable. I think with commitment from now all the 4 countries in the international community, it should be actually pushed through. And if you look at the news of the last couple of months, I think there is a lot of progress. But there are, of course, people who are still questioning it in India and Pakistan, in Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and parts of the international community as well. But I personally feel that, it should be decoupled from politics, and we should invest in it. It's worth it, because if the day TAPI becomes a success, you will see it will lead to Iran, India, Pakistan also, pipeline also becoming a reality. And then it will slowly change the economic, cultural, social, and eventually political landscape of the entire region. This one pipeline has potential to do what, for instance, 20 prime ministers involved in different parts of the world couldn't do over the last 40 years. So and at the same time, when you look at the economics of it, the economic works out very well in terms of energy security as well. But the question is that, are we making significant progress? Answer is yes and no. Second question is that, should we be investing that kind of money in it? Money as well as resources and goodwill? My answer is yes, we should do it. We must give it a sincere try. Today it appears that all countries involved are making a sincere effort, but we don't know what happens tomorrow. But the bigger point when it comes to energy security for us is that, look at oil, our dependence is in the region of 82-83%. Natural gas, we are touching 50% in terms of our dependence. When it comes to even renewable, that's mainly solar, 90% equipments we use are imported, mostly from China. So in terms of vulnerability, whether it's renewable or fossil fuels, it's not a very rosy picture. We got to basically change it. And how do we do that? In terms of solar, the government is a lot of emphasis on basically manufacturing all these equipments in India. When it comes to oil and gas, my own vision is that we should deepen our relations with the Middle Eastern countries, try to make it like a common market over a period of time, but at the same time diversify. And when it comes to transport part is concerned, we should go for a route where it's not only Indian ships, the ships are owned by various companies from different parts of the world. That will provide that kind of security we need, and strengthen Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean.
Mr. Ahmed sir, quickly, last quick point. There is a lot of talk about strategic investment in India. UAE is talking of putting in 75 billion in India. I'm told Qatar is looking at making an investment of 35 billion in India in the petrochemical sector. There are Bahrain is looking also for providing some kind of involvement with the financial services in India. The Saudis are also talking of some strategic reserve capacity in India. A, do we have the capacity to deliver on all that? And B, this promise from the UAE to put money in India was made several years ago. Have we come up with a worthwhile proposal?
All these countries are offering investments in our country in response to our own needs. We have stated very clearly that we need external investment for the development of our infrastructure, energy resources at home. As far as these countries are concerned, these are not major military powers. If they have to build up a strategic partnership with us, it has to be through the chains of investment for mutual advantage, mutual benefit. And this is the background in terms of which these offers have been made. It is now we who have to make ourselves business friendly enough to be able to accept these offers. So far the impression is, and this is an impression even within government circles, that we have some way to go. There is a need for considerable reform within our rules and regulatory setup, which would make us much more business friendly than we are today. So we have some way to go. We need reforms with regard to our taxation system, our labor system, with regard to acquisition of land. All of these areas will become, once these reforms have been made, we will become truly receptive as far as these investment offers are concerned.
Well, lots of important points raised there, and India's energy security is something which is very seriously being examined by the government. At the same time, the government is also taking lots of proactive steps. But we'll be back next week with another episode on energy diplomacy, and till then we wish to thank our guests for having enlightened us on this episode and this show. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.